Sal Buscema died recently at the age of 89, a few days shy of his 90th birthday. And it's different when we mourn someone like this because obviously they lived a long and full life. So what we're actually mourning is ourselves and the impact they had on ourselves. As the quote goes, we don't mourn artists because we knew them, we mourn them because they helped us know ourselves. Sal Buscema was a huge part of my early youth with comic books, especially Marvel. When I think of Marvel as a child, I think of Sal Buscema. I think of the Avengers. I think of the Incredible Hulk. I think of Spider-Man. I think of Captain America, especially Captain America. So much of that was Sal Buscema. Now, Sal is obviously the brother of the great John Buscema. And while Sal didn't have his brother's dynamics, his exaggerated dynamic style or style like say that over Neil Adams or at Alex Toth or Will Eisner, or it wasn't unique like a PK Russell or a Mike Kaluta. He was still exciting and dynamic, and as a result of not being too excessive or too different, he was more accessible to people. And I think that was part of his success. I like to joke he was kind of like Marvel's version of Kurt Swan, if Kurt Swan were exciting and dynamic. And like Kurt Swan, he was also cursed with constantly having Vinnie Coletta on his inks. Sal Buscema was best when he did his own inks. It was really lovely work, especially you would see later on, or best with another inker. Joe Sinnott comes to mind, but Vinnie Coletta, I know he helped the books get out on time, but he just doled a lot of shine. Now, if you don't recognize any of those names, don't worry about it because A, it's Old Geek Adventure for a reason. It's not just some cute name, it's an apt description. And B, maybe it's a sign you should. Because when you look at all the old artists, you see where your new artists came from. Because if you like the art of Ron Friends or Eric Larson, you like Sal Buscema, especially Ron Friends, especially Ron Friends. He's just straight up doing Sal Buscema, which is funny. Great irony. Sal Buscema did 100 issues of Spectacular Spider-Man. He did the first issue when it was called Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man. And when he was doing that, at one point, Ron Friends was drawing the Amazing Spider-Man, so it was like getting Sal Buscema twice a month. And sometimes they would work on the same Spider-Man book, one right after the other. And once I was briefly at DC, he actually inked Ron Friends. So yeah, you know Sal Buscema, and you love him. In addition to that epic run on Spectacular Spider-Man, Sal also did a decade on the Incredible Hulk with Bill Mantlo. He and Bill Mantlo would also do Rom the Space Knight. Come on, my my OGs, you remember that? Yeah, you remember him on the first Nova series with Richard Rider. As Nova, I know it's become a whole other thing, but at first it was Richard Rider who was kind of like what if Flash Thompson got powers? He wasn't a jerk like Thompson, but he was kind of a dumb jock. You know, he didn't have Peter Parker's brilliance. Um, he oh, when I said Spider Man, I really, really, really meant Marvel Team Up in the '70s. I love that so much. I don't know why they don't bring it back. It's a cash cow. It's Spider-Man teaming up with every single member of the Marvel Universe, and in that time, it would include Dracula and Frankenstein when they would get those licenses. And my favorite had to be to this day Spider-Man and the Beast because it was nonstop quipping from the two of them. And it was so funny to me as a child. I just laughed my ass off. And I was actually disappointed the other books weren't as funny as that one. He was also part of Christopher Claremont's great run on Marvel Team Up. I talked about the storyline with Black Widow, Nick Fury, Shang-Chi. Absolutely great. He did that. And that's when I think Mike Leohola did the inks, and it's absolutely beautiful. He would work with Claremont again on Ms. Marvel, Carol Danvers' first book, before she became Captain Marvel, obviously, where she didn't have pants and wore a scarf. And the scarf was constantly getting pulled. It was worse than the cape. She fought Deathbird. I think it was the first appearance of Deathbird, Lalandra's sister. And Carol wound up throwing her into the exhaust of a rocket. Obviously, she survived. He would work with Claremont yet again on the New Mutants. He did that. Obvious for me, most of all, it was his run on Captain America because Sal Buscema did Captain America when Captain America was having his first crisis of conscience about himself, about his country. One of the first issues he drew was Captain America dealing with the fact that Nick Fury was mad at him because he refused to join Shield, a super spy organization, and to stay Captain America. We would see him deal with the 50s cap for the first time, which shook him because he saw a dark mirror of himself of what he might have become. We saw him feel guilt at unearthing the or reopening the wounds of World War II when he was dealing with Baron Zemo's son for the first time. He dies in that, but of course, Baron Zemo's son would come back. We saw him go through the Secret Empire, which was a reflection of Watergate. We saw him become so disillusioned he quit entirely and became nomad. And when I say art helps us know ourselves, this Captain America run showed us that you could still love your country and be disillusioned with your country. You could still love your country and, in fact, fight your country to the point where you have to kick in the door of the White House, which is what Captain America did. He would come back to Captain America when he was turned into a Nazi for the second time, was brainwashed, and once again face off with the 50s Cap, who we saw die very obviously on panel along with Sharon Carter, but of course they would get better and come back. Sal Buscema also did a run on Tarzan that I remember buying. And that's what I mean. The more I think about it, the more these things start falling out of my head. Like I said, he did a brief tenure at DC where he said his job was just to ink guys who could barely hold a pencil, but I'm sure that does not include Ron Friends, though Sal did draw exactly one issue of Superman. Now, remember what I said about Sal being accessible? Well, it was this accessibility which actually made him probably the most seen artist at Marvel during the 70s and early 80s. That's because Sal drew the Hostess ads in Marvel Comics, and everybody saw the Hostess ads. I don't care what book you were buying, you saw the Hostess ads. So yes, you knew Sal Buscema too. So I'm going to show you a bunch of books Sal did. He didn't necessarily do the covers. If we did Sal Buscema's covers, we would be here all year. But these are books that I read, I liked, that I literally own, and maybe check some of them out, especially that Marvel team up with the Beast. It's still so